Hello and welcome to the Car Care Auto Reviews channel, and welcome to the all-new 2025 Nissan Kicks, which in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood. We're going to take a look underneath it, inside and out, some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. So the Nissan Kicks in 2025 has one powertrain option-ish, if you can count all-wheel drive. So engine-wise, we only have one engine. This is the MR20DD 2-liter 4-cylinder direct injected engine, non-turbo. It's a good thing. Let's dive into its mechanical construction. We'll go from there. At the very top, you have a plastic valve cover. Pretty decent quality, actually, this one, which I really like that. Underneath it is a two-piece cylinder head, but the way the cylinder head is constructed is kind of strange. So usually two-piece cylinder heads, they'll have the cylinder head and then a kind of a cam cradle or cam carrier that has the cams and caps on top. This one is not like that. The cams sit on the cylinder head, but then the second piece of the cylinder head kind of caps them at the top. It's kind of a strange, I haven't seen that design before. Interesting design. This engine does have dual variable valve timing. This engine does have buckets, doesn't have hydraulic lifters or anything, so valve adjustments are manual. And it's interesting to see. That's a pretty modern engine, so I don't know what happened there. This engine is a timing chain engine. Does have two timing chains, one of them from the cams to the crank. Does have an internal hydraulic tensioner. Other small motor chain goes to the balance shaft. Now, the fuel system in this is direct injection only. Wish that was not the case. Wish it was dual or something else, but that's what we have here. The cool thing is the high pressure fuel pump sits on the side on its own cradle, not on top of the valve cover, which I really like that. The direct injectors are underneath the intake manifold, which is a good spot, not on top of the valve cover, which is nice. The cooling system in this engine is super basic, as basic as they come. You have a belt-driven mechanical water pump. You don't have any fancy valves or anything. You have a thermostat. You do have coolant going to the CVT warmer, not the cooler. It does have a thermostat that shuts it off when it's too hot. And then you do have coolant going to the EGR. Speaking of the EGR, this engine does have a coolant-cooled EGR with a cooler and everything. It does sit a little bit in the back. Kind of an awkward place, but it's better than others we have seen. This engine also does have an oil cooler that has coolant going to it, which is pretty cool. Now, the transmission in the Nissan Kicks is a CVT transmission. It's the latest generation CVT transmission. I don't know why Nissan sticks with the CVTs. I mean, one thing have to be said though, they do make the best feeling, smoothness-wise, than driving CVTs because they've been at it for so long. But they do have a reputation. Jatco CVTs, they actually started the reputation for CVTs. I hope this one is better. Time will tell. And this powertrain also can be equipped with all-wheel drive. We'll take a look at it in a little bit underneath it. But basically, you have a transfer case mounted to the transmission. Just doesn't have anything electronic. It always sends power to the back. Motor in the back engages, disengages the rear differential. Pretty simple design. Basically, almost everybody uses a similar design, which is good. Now, let's talk about a few things here under the hood. Few strange things. So the intake manifold's in the front, exhaust in the back, and somehow, some way they managed to make this very small engine in this relatively decently sized engine bay a little bit busy in the front side. You have a lot of space in the back, very busy in the front. I do like that they used, for the most part, I don't see a lot of heavy use of plastic stuff. Yes, the valve cover in the intake, but hoses and clamps and stuff, there's not it's a proper hose and clamp. You don't have one-time use clamps everywhere. There are a few plastic stuff, few strange worm clamps here and there, and there is a distinct Renault Nissan on the battery, that's probably the worst part that ever happened to Nissan. Overall, things don't look terrible here. I do have one observation here. There is, I don't know why manufacturers do this. It's just like the mother of afterthoughts. The ground. So if you look at the ground out of the battery, comes out of the battery one single wire. I don't think it's big enough. We'll see. And it mounts to a very flimsy little piece on the strut tower. I mean, that's the entire ground out of the battery. And then you look on the other side of the engine bay, there's this massive ground that goes from the body to the engine. We could do this better. I just gotta say, and I feel like they put one bolt initially on the mounting point, and one was not enough. They put two bolts. I mean, Could we just mount it to a better spot? Just a small suggestion there. Let's take a look underneath the 2025 Nissan Kicks. Starting in the front, everything is covered, and I do have a small complaint, Nissan. So this is a very basic car. You know, a lot of people drive an average Joe in and out, or put hopefully a lot of miles on everything. Why can't we leave a door for service? Nothing. I mean, you have to remove this entire cover just to do something as simple as an oil change. A little bit of an oversight. I wish they would change stuff like that. With that, let's look at the front suspension here. Steel knuckle. I was kind of surprised by that, honestly. Steel lower control arm with a separate ball joint. Love this design. Single piston caliper, to be expected of a car this size. Steel sway bar link. I was really surprised by that. That is a move in the right direction. McPherson strut at the top. I love that they have bolted it down to the knuckle, not any strange design and whatnot. And then we come here to this. I mean, the exhaust here, Nissan exhaust usually is not the top of its game, but this one is really not good. I just have to say it. I hope this is kind of an early version of it, because I don't exactly know what happened here. Why does this have this strange paint on it? Somebody painted it. I don't know what happened there, but this exhaust is really not good. Even though this car is not exactly meant for quietness and everything, but I do like that they put some covers. Drive shaft goes right here on top. You do have some covers on the sides. Not a huge fuel tank. A saddle fuel tank goes all the way to this side. Then we look at the rear here. This is the all-wheel drive model. You do have a cute little differential here. Of course, it's not meant for off-road or anything, although the ground clearance is pretty good. Talk about that in a second. But here's the unit that actually makes all-wheel drive happen. This is a motor that engages and disengages the rear wheels as needed, which is pretty simple design. I hope we don't have issues with it. Although one thing I will say, very small axles. It's understandable. Not painted axles. I wish they are painted. I mean, this car is practically new. They're already rusty. Let's look at the rear suspension here. Very, very simple rear suspension. I mean, you cannot have a car with simpler suspension because it has McPherson struts in the back. I haven't seen a car with McPherson struts in the back, modern car, for a while. I was kind of, I mean, you cannot have a simpler rear suspension, flat out. Three arms and the McPherson strut to the top. As simple as that. Single piston caliper with integrated motor for the parking brake. Aluminum sway bar links, which is kind of strange why the rears are aluminum and the front are not, but that's how they deemed it. Now the exhaust continues with some very not really good welds and everything. Exhaust quality of this car, I have to say, not good. But what is good, it's covered. I really like that. I mean, this side is covered. This side is completely covered. I love this. Thank you, Nissan, for that. Thank you very, very much. Let's take a look at the exterior of the Nissan Kicks. And before we start that, I want to say one thing. So usually certain cars that are this shape will say that they look like a shoe. Well, this one in the advertising material, it literally says this design is inspired by high-end sneakers. Kicks. This looks like a shoe. Nice shoe. But let's talk about the final details here. I mean, this is a design you're either gonna really like or really dislike. I am unfortunately leaning to the I dislike it. I think it's a bit too much. Too much for a car that's an everyday car. But there are some that will like it. A lot of LEDs is a lot. But the headlight is up here. This is actually a pretty interesting LED headlight. It feels like out of segment. Love the new Nissan logo. And this does not have a radar sensor. The radar sensor is actually all the way at the bottom. So I wish that was not the case. Nissan does put their SR right here. So you can remember you have the special model. Now, the wheels. We gotta talk about the wheels. I mean, aren't these the coolest wheels on the planet? 3-spoke wheels. Giant spokes, but still. It's a 3-spoke wheel. Been a minute since we've seen a car brave enough to have that. And then they did something else that is actually pretty cool. If you look at the side profile of this car, like going this way, these are actually raised fenders. Usually in cars like this, they'll give you an illusion that they are raised, but in this, it's actually raised. Front less than the rear, but Nonetheless, that is a pretty cool design. Now, these are not body color. This segment, I guess you can expect that. But they do give you a little bit of a design in the bottom. Kind of interesting. And then the obsession with branding. Obsession. It says Kicks right here. We'll keep that going. I think this was totally unnecessary, by the way. The door handle situation. I'm going to call it a situation because I feel like it is. So it is a touch handle. And this car actually has an approach feature where if you have the key in your pocket and you just approach it, it'll unlock. And if you walk away from it, it'll lock. But then they have a button. So I guess because this is such a modern car and you just updated this, I feel like Nissan wants to have a button for lock. That's how they decided. Of course, in this segment, you don't expect it to be in the back as well. And then we move to this section. This going up and going this way is a total design cube, but it makes the window this big. You have the least visibility out of this corner. Yes, the windows here are much bigger, but I feel like if they would have continued this line straight, somehow work it in here and make this window bigger, it would have been better. And then we come back to the obsession. If you look really, really, really close here, it says Kicks again. So is the other side, and so is the driver's side mirror. Bit excessive. But then we look at the back. Again, you're either gonna love it or really not like it. I don't like it, but it's a departure from everything you expect from a car that is in this segment. There's something interesting before we get in the back here. I don't understand why manufacturers do this. You have this little hump here and hump there for the hinges. You couldn't integrate them in the body? I guess they couldn't. Looking at the back here, it says Kicks SR all-wheel drive. I think we're good on badging. It's not, seems excessive, but it's not. I mean, you need to know the trim and is it all-wheel drive or not. Love the Nissan logo, the new one. This one is not a power door. It's a manual door, which is perfectly fine. Few things here. In the Kicks, you have an option of a spare tire. It costs you $180. And let me tell you one thing. It's the best $180 you will spend on your Kicks. Because then you have a spare tire. Love it. It's the best option. And I love that they make, I think every manufacturer should do this. Just make it an option. People want it. It's available. If they don't want it, well, they don't want it. Let's take a look here. I usually am not super keen on these. I feel like they're always in the way. But at the same time, I mean, if you want it to be there, it's already there. And it's covering the back, which is cool. It's a decent space. The slope of the back does take up a little bit, but for a car in this segment, it's pretty decent space. We do have a lot of intrusion from the wheel wells, but other than that, I think I did this one pretty good. Let's take a look at the inside of the 2025 Nissan Kicks. And I think this is the part where they really got it right. I mean, they did this very, very well. You know, you get in a car in this segment, you're not expecting it to be very nice, just expecting it to be a giant blob of plastic that just blends in the background. This is actually nice. I have to say that. The design itself is nice, not just with options and whatnot. But then we get to the options. I mean, the option list on this is giant. It literally rivals cars that are way ahead of this segment. I mean, you have panoramic sunroof if you want it. Please don't get it. You have this very nice leather all around and the design of the interior. You have screens all across. You have a lot of options here. You even have a digital key in this. I mean, you don't expect that. You even have speakers in the headrest. They don't work very well, but hey, something to brag to your friends about. Here's the bottom line on this interior. Not only is the execution well, the materials are nice, except the headliner is a little bit on the cheapo side, which is, I get it. They had to cut a corner somewhere, which I give them that. But it's not just this gimmicky interior. Even using it, certain things are a little bit gimmicky, but for the most part, it's actually a very functional interior, and I like that. For example, you look at the gauges. It's this giant screen, this higher trim. I like it. It actually, that whole thing where it's like one big screen spread across, it looks nice. Now, the screen doesn't do much else beyond display gauges, but I can live with that. And then the screen next to it, which is this one here, is the SR trim, the higher trim. It does have this nice bigger screen. It's actually pretty good wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Works really well. Does have a lot of features and options and customizations, and it's not glitchy. I like that. They should put that in all their cars. And then the simple things that remain simple. Mechanical shifter, don't need to change it. Now, your HVAC controls are all here, separate, not in the screen, but they are touch capacitive. I wish that was not the case, but hey, we can live with that. And you do have heated seats in this higher trim one here. Steering wheel controls are super simple. I mean, you cannot make it simpler than this. I just wish the rotary dial was actually the volume, and then up and down was what the rotary dial does. It's a small observation. Overall, I really like the execution of this interior from every aspect except one. You sit in this car, you look at this interior, it's like, wow, I expected it to be horrible. This is very nice. I mean, that's the impression you get. But then the seats could use some work. They're very nice looking, but not the most comfortable seats in the planet. And once you get finally comfortable in the seats and you get going, thing is extremely loud. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And the suspension is very unrefined, super crashy on bumps. It almost feels like I like this car better when it was stopped than when we were driving. Part of that is because this interior is executed so well and you kind of forget you're in this segment and you drive it and it shocks you. But part of it, Nissan always does their suspension like that. It's a little bit crashy, unrefined, could use refinement, especially in a car like this. This is really nicely done. Truth have to be said, they did this one really well. Let's take a look at the back seat here. Actually, they're comfortable seats. I'm 5'7", this is my driving position. Don't have a ton of knee room. They do have a cutout in the seat, except when I sit comfortably, my legs are already outside their cutout. So there's that. Decent headroom, not a lot, especially since there's this big dip here for the panoramic sunroof and you can seriously see it. So obviously this is not the biggest car on the planet, but not a bad back seat. You even have a couple USB-Cs in this particular trim. Not a bad place to be. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the 2025 Nissan Kicks. And folks, this one checks a lot of boxes in the right way. I mean, a lot. But does have a few things that I feel like they're minor things. Minor things as in we can fix them easily. Nissan. The first one is, this seems to be a universal Nissan thing. Suspension. Look, I like the suspension design. I like that this has the rear McPherson strut, keeps it super simple. Cannot be simpler than this. But the suspension feels crashy. It almost feels like something is off, but there isn't. A lot of Nissan models are like that from the get-go. We notice this. I wish they would refine their suspension a little. Look, we're not looking for a cloud ride here in this segment, but a little bit better compared to others. This feels definitely on the loud and crashy side. The other thing is the seats. I mean, the level of options in this car are impressive, truly impressive, but the seats could be better. They're not super uncomfortable and horrible like that, but you definitely notice where they drew the line. Okay, we're not going to go further. The seats could use work. They look great. I love them, but they could be more comfortable, and power option would be nice, at least in the higher trims. So, the 2025 Nissan Kicks. Folks, I have to say one thing. This was a surprise to me because usually, a car in this segment, you expect it not to be good. You expect it to be cheap, flimsy, and just horrible. And usually you expect these cars to end up lined up at the car rental agency, just all in the same color, cheapest options. And you expect the fleet companies to buy them left and right because they're cheap. And the cheap part stayed true with this generation. Folks, this was a giant surprise. This is not just better than the previous generation, which was not terrible, just needed an update, but it was very bland and generic. This is just a surprise. I have to say they did this one pretty well. Now, the looks on the outside depends if you like high-end sneakers or not. That's a matter of taste. But I think where they got it really good, almost perfect, actually, I'll dare say, is the interior. At the price point where this starts at the base model, it's a nice interior. It's a nice design. You don't have to sit in just a blobby, boring place. Actually got the interior. It looks nice. And if you want options and you don't want to go for a bigger car, a more expensive car, This thing is very impressive for options. I mean, you have a panoramic sunroof in this segment. You have all these options that are available. And if you don't want them, you can still get the basic one for a decent price. The last car we reviewed like this was the Subaru Crosstrek, where it was decently priced and had decent options. This one is very similar to that. Nothing is perfect in life though, and I said it's almost perfect the interior. They really need to do some tweaking on the suspension and maybe a little bit of more insulation, just a little bit. We're not expecting it to be an infinity here, but just a little bit would be nicer. But the suspension really needs some improvement because this is such a nice interior. And the last thing on the interior, the seats could use some work. I mean, a power seat option would be nice. A more comfortable seat would be nice. That is one thing that is notable. I mean, the rest of it's so nice, just the seats. Nice looking, don't get me wrong, but they could be more comfortable. That is one thing. But folks, I think Nissan outdid themselves with this one. They really did a good job updating this. The only question which is going to turn this from a big hit or not is reliability. I mean, Nissan keeps going with their CVT. It doesn't have a good reputation. I hope they got this one right. This is the latest generation here, because if that part of the reliability holds true, this is a lot of value. I just have to say it, because it's not a bad car. It surprises you. You expect it to be bad. You get in it. It's actually very well thought out, and they did an exceptional job updating the old model to this one. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.